As we look back on how this year has been, with inflation at a 40-year high, we just got out of a summer of record high gas prices. What has been the feedback that you've gotten throughout this year so far in your district and your state?
Well, and I think it's even worse than that, right? Wall Street just went into a bear market. I have constituents that have lost 40% of their 401ks. And from North Dakota, it's especially frustrating because ag and energy is what we do, and we do it really well. And if you're a cattle rancher and you walk into a grocery store, if you can find steak and it's twice as expensive as it was a year ago, and you know not a single penny of that increase is coming back to your operation, you're not interested in having a nuanced conversation about supply chains, you're pissed off. And if you're an unemployed pipeline worker because the Keystone XL got canceled and your energy costs are up 35% from where they were last year before we get into winter, you're not interested in having a nuanced conversation about energy. You're angry about it because it's affecting your family to the tune of about $700 a month. It's the most regressive tax you can possibly have. When eggs and bread and energy are going up, you have real issues at home. And when you come from a state like mine that is part of the solution to this, if the federal government would just get out of the way, it gets really, really frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, you have plenty of energy right there underfoot that hasn't been able to be developed because of the policies of this administration. I mean, what do you see as far as the situation, what's happening on the other side of the world, the impact that's had on gas prices? I mean, how frustrating is it? What are you hearing both from families and businesses about what North Dakota could offer as a solution?
Well, and so this is really where it gets frustrating, right? I mean, Germany's burning more coal right now than 13 years ago when they started their clean power plan. There are strategic disadvantages to a lot of the regulatory environment. You can't get piped to the coast, but even if you can get it to the coast, various different countries all across the world, there's no place to onboard LNG. The tanker capacity doesn't exist. We don't have any of these quick-term solutions, but when you look at a state like mine from North Dakota, we talk about the shale revolution, you can talk about the Permian in Texas, Powder River in Wyoming, but since the United States left the Paris Climate Accords in 2017, we're the only country to lower our carbon emissions. You know why? The Bakken. This isn't a shale play anywhere else. This is an offshore. It's because of the Bakken. Because we discovered natural gas. We produce it cleaner and more efficiently than anywhere else on the planet. And the United States lowered our carbon emissions because of the natural gas we're producing in the Bakken. And instead of celebrating that, instead of celebrating small American North Dakota companies that are putting people to work, that have revitalized communities that quite frankly were dying prior to this oil boom, we have an entire administration and a climate activist left that is trying to demonize what makes my state great.
No, that's spot on, and such an important point, right, about doing it cleanly. The demand doesn't disappear, so you either get it from North Dakota or you get it from countries that do it dirtier and more corrupt.
We'd shut down every coal plant in North Dakota tomorrow. The world's going to burn more coal next year. That's the reality. We have a tremendous resource that is utilized and necessary for people to turn the lights on. I mean, we deal with this right in August. I always used to say, you want to talk about cheap, affordable, reliable energy? Don't send anybody home for August. Make us stay in D.C. for the entire month of August. Turn off the air conditioning.
Yeah.
See how people recognize it then.
Yeah.
And for us, it's different, right? In February, we can go 20 days in a row before it's above zero.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of whether or not you can heat your house or not. It's a matter of whether people freeze to death or not. So it's important.
Absolutely. And so what should this administration do and what can Congress do, maybe let's say next year, to really turn the tide and get better energy policy in place?
Well, I think we have an opportunity. I think because of it, if you believe as I do that about 70% of all the inflationary pressures essentially go back to energy, right? And we know this, whether it's your inputs for fertilizer, anhydrous, diesel fuel, all of the different things, truck driving, all of those different things raising it. And I think our friends, our allies in Europe recognize that maybe they were sold a bag of goods by a lot of different people and relying on Vladimir Putin for their entire energy cost because they're not going to do it with offshore wind. Maybe we should start having a conversation. Unfortunately, I think it's become such a zealotry for too many people on this energy thing that facts don't matter anymore. So we have to convince the people that we can convince. Permitting reform, litigation reform. We know this better than most in North Dakota because we're the geographic center of North America. So we have to get our product to market. And our biggest constraints aren't getting the oil out of the ground, aren't getting the natural gas out of the ground, and isn't getting wheat out of the field. It's the permitting and getting that product to market. And that's where agencies like FERC have really, really been problematic. FERC wasn't exactly the most nimble organization to begin with. But in the middle of an energy crisis, when we have a president flying to Saudi Arabia and giving fist bumps, begging OPEC to increase production, you also have the same administration telling FERC that before you can put pipe in the ground, you got to mitigate upstream carbon and downstream carbon. Anybody who understands how the pipeline industry works knows that if you have to mitigate the carbon of the oil well and the SUV, you're not getting a piece of pipe in the ground. It's not happening. And we have to get this stuff. It's still the cheapest, safest way to transport these products. And turns out the entire country needs them, and so does the world.